what you need to know about space and cyber? What is the thing that they're exchanging in space? It's data. We are on the precipice, and I am not a warmonger, but we are on the precipice of a data war. We need to get after ethical AI. We need to get after healthy world policies for the movement and utilization of data and cyber, and even how our space is governed. We need to get to a world place to where, like we have the international law of the seas, we need the international law of the space domain.
Welcome to the Future at GovCon, a weekly podcast that looks at what is happening now and how it will impact the future of our industry. I'm Jake Frazer, owner and CEO of Precision Talent Solutions. In leading one of the industry's top executive search firms, I talk to influencers across the industry every day. C-suite executives, growth officers, diplomats, senior government officials, and top flag officers. Every week, we bring in experts from across GovCon, cyber, AI, space, NATO, medical, and more. And we'll have them share the key trends happening today and how our industry will look in the years to come. So pour a cup of coffee and let's get started. Hey everyone, it's Jake with PTS. We are here for another edition of our podcast, The Future of GovCon, and I'm thrilled to welcome Major General retired Dusty Schultz is with us today. Dusty, welcome to our podcast.
Jake, it's great to be here with you and the team, and really thrilled about this discussion.
You have so much to talk about, such a great career. And, for this podcast, we're really focused on where things are heading with our foreign policy, with our, as a government, as an industry, and your background and also your position and your forward-looking disposition, I think, is going to be great for our audience. So thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. And it really is a lot of fun to think about the strategy and the reality of how things affect one another and how it's going to move us forward as a nation and a world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know you got your hands on a lot of stuff right now. I was thinking, we were chatting about it, how we got introduced from Michelle Letcher.
Yes.
Who is a wife of a guy I was a cadet with. What was that, 34 years ago? The wonderful Letcher family. I'm glad she got us connected. And you've been to a couple of our events, so it's good to see you here. You're part of our community, and I look forward to sharing with our audience what you have to say. So let's get started. Talk a little bit about growing up, like your formative years, what made you who you are today?
I'm about people, purpose, and passion. And that started as a little country bumpkin gal, the daughter of an antiquarian bookseller on a little farm in Northern California. I spent my days riding a little Shetland pony in Star Wars socks, cowboy boots, and calico dresses. And my mother was a gourmet chef. And unfortunately, fortunately for me, my mom was the most incredible woman I think I've ever met in my life. Unfortunately, she died when I was 13 years old. And so at 13, I had the clarity of mind to send myself to an all-girls private Catholic boarding school.
Wow.
And then when I was there, many of the young ladies were learning other languages and were there from other countries. And I realized that they had something that I didn't, which was a second language and an understanding about cultural diversity. So I applied and got another scholarship to go be an exchange student in Spain. So at 14 years old, I was off to Spain as an exchange student for a year.
Where were you?
In Madrid. And the family that I lived with, the father was the president of the school of diplomacy, and we just had a phenomenal time. I really loved the fact that in Spain I saw, divergent cultures come together over centuries and peacefully live. Now, Spain has, blemishes on its past like any country, but I was really thrilled that we could get around a table and we could have really intriguing debates. We could have intellectual diversity, and nobody was attacked for, thinking differently. That it was actually, hey, what's your idea? I disagree with you. I thought more of, as I had been trained at Catholic school, whether it's a Socratic debate or, the Federalists, anti-Federalists, well, okay, our leaders of our nation came together and fought with one another tooth and nail. But my hope is that I wasn't there, that they didn't hate each other for it. Today, we vilify people for not thinking exactly the same way. So I learned to love that in Spain. I came back from Spain, and
my 17-year-old, he went to Barcelona for 6 months on an exchange program. And
wonderful.
He left a boy and came back a man, and he told me, he says, "Daddy, now I realize a lot of what you've been telling me. I realize I understand."
It's incredible. Yeah, I am a fan of Spain and the opportunity, the learning I had. I came back. I ended up I had the idea that I wanted to go. I went to the library and I came back with a pamphlet on the Naval Academy. So I applied and got my nomination and appointment to go to the Naval Academy. And there I was with my big happy, congratulations letter. And I walked into my father, who had spent 18 months in the Navy in the Korean War. And that's as much military as my family had. And he literally looked at me and he said, "Sweetheart, why didn't you just marry an officer?" And I got mad.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to do this. Just because of that, I'm going to do this. I don't know if he was joking with me. He was serious. To this day, I really don't know. But I did get a little bit of cold feet in the sense of, it's like, oh, it's 4 years of active duty school. It's 6 years of active duty after that. I don't even understand what active duty is. What is this? And that's when New Mexico Military Institute reached out to me and said, "Hey, do we have an opportunity for you? You can do a 2-year program and then go to the college, 4-year college, and finish out and decide if you want to go reserve or active duty. It's up to you. You get more choice." And I went, haha, I like choice. So I went that route and loved it.
You missed the academy life by maybe even some indirect advice from your father.
Well, and honestly, New Mexico Military Institute gave me that rigor, that discipline, those values, but it wasn't 4 years. And that was really helpful. And
how did your father's military experience influence you? Did you hear Navy stories, or did you?
No, the most I heard was my dad was a radar technician in the Korean War for 18 months, got out, and then went to the University of Vermont. I mean, that's as much.
Talk about it.
No. And so it's just, the military was, I come from a family of antiquarian booksellers, of some of the founding fathers of our nation, William Penn. I mean, I come from an academic family that looks over at military and kind of looks sideways and wonders what they're up to.
What was your interest in the military?
I wanted to be part of something. Yeah, I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. I wanted to affect, I believed in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when I looked at the military, I saw it as one of the most powerful organizations in the world that could use its powers for good, because you need militaries also for peacekeeping. You need militaries for good order and discipline, not for, USSR hyper control of individuals. You need it to be better than yourself. And so I wanted to make an impact and leave a legacy and lead others. And so I saw the military as the way to do that. Now, did I think I was going to end up 37 years later as the director of intelligence for U.S. Southern Command, or having worked as the director of strategic operations for the entire Army and run that? No.
Yeah.
I mean,
you never know. I mean, I think I saw the military. My father was career. My brother wound up being career. I think I saw it as a way to get overseas.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I lived in Germany as a kid, and when you have to fill out your preferences for branches and locations, I remember doing that, and I put Germany. They had 6 options. I put Germany 6 times, and I put armor 6 times, and they came back because they had to do 6 different choices. But I wound up getting armor in Germany, and that was my way out. It was like a way back to Europe for me.
It's funny. I put Texas, and they gave me El Paso. And my husband, the Texan, looked at me and went, that's not the Texas I really was thinking about. He was thinking about more Fort Hood or Fort Sam. But it was
You've been married long time.
34
Wow.
years. We have 2 children, 5 grandchildren under the age of 3.
Wow. Okay.
And yes, David and I met at New Mexico Military Institute. He was the honor board chairman. Yeah, he's now a certified arborist and does a lot of really neat things. I will tell you that, he's really my anchor, and he challenges me better than anybody else in this world. He's helped me get after being efficient and effective, and really, whether I look at being a Lean Six Sigma black belt, I mean, David was the one that was constantly challenging me to make more efficient processes that could be duplicated over time.
Yeah. So what kind of were you at the Institute? Were you?
So I was the one that didn't get a single demerit. I was the one that won regimental. I was the one that cut my hair and had a flat top and put books and stones in my rucksack and went around at night rucking so I could be better than my male counterparts.
Oh, come on. Do you have we need to see the picture of the flat top.
Yeah, you probably do. You probably do. There are a few around. Most people don't believe me, and then I show the picture like, oh. I mean, interesting. I meet some friends that I knew at New Mexico Military Institute, and now I have long hair. And, they don't remember me as Schultz because I was Randall back then. And so they're like, oh, I know you? Oh, or people say, hey, yeah, Dusty's X, Y, and Z. They're like, Dusty Randall? I'm like, no, Dusty Schultz. So
did you finish up at Texas Tech? Is that right?
I did. So I had a roommate who was a Latter-day Saint at New Mexico Military Institute, and she went on to Brigham Young University. And she convinced me, because I love skiing, that I needed to go up there and go to Brigham Young University. So I worked at a ski resort and went to BYU for a year. And that's also when my husband, who became my boyfriend from distance, is like, hey, we need to get serious about this. And so that's when he proposed. And I actually went down to Texas Tech to finish out. And David was a police officer down there. And I finished out at Texas Tech and became a school teacher. And that was all before I went on active duty. And I really do tell people that, interestingly enough, I was going to wait 10 years before I got married and wait probably 3 or 4 years after that till I had a kid. None of those things happened. We got married, and next thing I knew, I was pregnant. I tell people that parenting and being a school teacher made me a better leader, because you want to help those that you work with, and you want to make the world a better place, and you want them to outpace you. You want them to out-succeed you. I mean, and so I feel very fortunate that we started with our son young, and David and I have made we weren't afraid of making decisions because we really wanted to use our energies to make the world a better place.
So you must have spent a lot of time PCSing, moving, bringing the family around, Dodd school systems. Was that?
So 23 moves. Yes, wow. I think we're almost about to make our 24th move. And, our son, as a senior in high school, wrote an essay for college of moving 17 times in 18 years. Ironically, kids did not go to DoD school systems because I was married to David, and for probably the first, I don't know, I'd say 10, 15 years on active duty. David's like, I don't want to live on post and have all the guys look at me strangely, because he was one of the first stay-at-home dads. And it was not cool then. And it wasn't until I came back from Iraq and was going to the National War College that we even decided to live on post. It was the first time. And Fort Bliss doesn't have a high school for kids. So I tell people, David and I are a very traditional family. We just don't live a traditional life. And people are like, well, how does that work? And I'm like, don't worry. We're good. We got this.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk a little bit about your military career, like you're commissioned in.
Yeah. So I was commissioned in 1989, but you've got to think that I started at New Mexico Military Institute, and I was actually a drilling cadet with a field artillery drill sergeant unit. And that was a lot of fun because they were looking for the guy Dustin, and the gal Dustin showed up. Like, no, we need the guy. But I will tell you that they were phenomenal because those field artillery drill sergeants did a lot of role playing with me and taught me how to be really direct with my soldiers and leaders about, no, what you're saying offends me, or, just how to be direct, not difficult or mean, but direct and forceful. And so that was huge. I also later on was put in a civil affairs unit and a combat engineer unit until I landed in Intel. And that was a real niche for me because I am a Spanish speaker. I've got Portuguese. I work a little bit of French and really felt like I could thrive there. Ironically, though, somewhere at about 6 or 8 years, I jumped into that was all in reserve or National Guard duty. I did both reserve and National Guard. David and I thought about, okay, he was a sheriff's deputy at that time, and I was a school teacher. And the reality is, we were trying to rub two nickels together, and it was making a penny. And so we realized that if I went on active duty, we might have more opportunities and options. And so I volunteered to go on active duty, and they sent me to El Paso and as an intelligence officer, and they assigned me to a core support group and a garrison support unit. So those were not standard military intelligence units. And so I did that for a time. Ironically, David and I thought about, hey, when am I going to get off active duty? And I flippantly told him, oh yeah, when I get pregnant again. Ironically, I was pregnant the next month. And then what I did is I left active duty, and I realized that the reserve had this incredible program where they would send intelligence officers to go teach the different federal organizations how to do intel. So whether it was the FBI, the DEA, the Marshal Service, the Forest Service. So I was doing that for 6 months active duty stints. And I would go down around to the different high intensity drug trafficking areas and teach them how to do intelligence. And I enjoyed that for a time. But I had decided that I was going to actually completely leave the military. I had 2 kids and was going to walk away. So I put on my resignation paperwork, and then 9/11 happened. I said, hey, I love my country, but where's my paperwork? And they laughed and they said, yeah, you're not going anywhere. You're a company grade intelligence officer. You're coming back on to active duty. So I ended up going to the University of Utah and teaching as an assistant professor of military science there, and loved it. The family loved it as well. And so we went from there, and for my command and general staff college, which is a mid-grade schooling, I put in for what is called the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. It's a year-long command and general staff college with half the class from Latin America, to include your instructors. Same curriculum as Leavenworth, just in Spanish. And so I applied and was accepted. And my husband looked at me and said, so why are you doing this the hard way? And I'm like, okay, well, if it's worth doing well. And I'll make relationships and friendships that I'd never make in Leavenworth. So we went down that path, did that, loved it, really succeeded at it. Went up to, after that, to an Intel battalion and was their executive officer in Washington State. And that's when Admiral Stavridis did what we call a magic move. He had met me at WinSec, and he decided that I needed to be working for him. So he moved me down to Southern Command, and I was there. And he put me in charge of the Office of Public-Private Cooperation, and I worked with NGOs and PVOs to support the hospital ship. And then I also helped General Keane after the earthquake of 2010 with that whole problem set and getting donations to the people in a timely fashion. And it was really eye-opening because the military, they teach us that we've got this, we have the dime, the diplomacy, information, military, and economics. And we treat the M as the big effect. But little do we realize that the economics, the information, and diplomacy actually have a huge role to play. So when Haiti did go to hell in a handbag in 2010, and there was all sorts of problems, and General Keane was calling me up and saying, we need water today. And USAID was saying, okay, we can get it to you in 3 weeks. He's like, we need water today. How was I able to work with Pepsi and FedEx to get water delivered that day to the airport for free and have food for the poor as an NGO accept that? And I was constantly in the lawyer's office saying, how do I do this? How does one do this legally? How do we do this to where the government is not accepting donations outside of the Denton program? And how do we do this legally? And so we did, and we did it at scale, and it was pretty impressive. And so from there, I left, and I was chosen to be a battalion commander, and I went to Iraq. And I had what one might call a
What
pickup.
year was that?
That was just as Iraq was closing. So it was 2011 to 2012. And we were taking over for 2 intelligence battalions in theater. We were 1. We were given more mission. We were given a lot of funky restrictions, and I had a pickup team. So out of 200 and close to 300 people, 160 were from other units that weren't organic to the unit. And we figured it out. We built it. We built the pickup team, and then we implemented at scale over the entire theater, doing what, in my opinion, we were trained to do, which was, well, they constantly teach us that, in battle, you can build task forces. And so I turned my companies into different task forces because historically they had only been a single type of intel unit. And so I broke them up and made them each company task forces for geographic regions, which then, because after my pre-deployment site survey where I went and talked to people in theater, they're like, hey, the way it's working now is not working. So, okay, well, how would you have your, ideal world? How do you get innovative and think about what is in the possible of doing? So I did that. And the unit had phenomenal success. I've got to say, I was so thrilled when the unit got the Meritorious Unit Commendation Medal as a battalion having deployed. That's really huge. And so that is all to the soldiers, my NCOs, my warrants, the officers. They went above and beyond.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so from there, I was chosen to go to I had actually delayed to go to the National War College. I went to the National War College for a year, and then I was chosen to be a chief of operations for Military Intelligence Command. And so I did that, and thought that I would be there for 2 years, and wanted a brigade command because all young officers should want a brigade command. You're either in command or preparing for command. And I was selected in that process of being an operations officer. I was standing up a new intelligence brigade for Northern Command. That was a new theater intelligence brigade. I was designing and constructing it for somebody eventually to take on the command. Well, I was selected as the first commander. And so it was very rewarding. So then we moved down to San Antonio, worked with Army North and NORTHCOM. And after 2 years of that, ironically, I was fighting with my manager of like, okay, why aren't we talking about what's next for me? I really want to talk about what positions I'm interested in. She was always busy. She's like, I don't have time. We just might keep you where you're at for a little bit after you leave command. Maybe you can help at Army North or something. I was feeling very dismissed, and little did I know that I had been selected for general. And all of a sudden I got a phone call and said, hey, we hear that you speak Spanish and you've been in school units and civil affairs units and engineer units and all sorts of different units. We're going to send you to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico? What's in Puerto Rico? I haven't even been to okay. So we went to Puerto Rico, and I PCS to Puerto Rico, and it was phenomenal. But I get a phone call as I'm literally trying to house hunt from my 3-star, and he says, "Hey, Dusty, are you looking at the news?" And, "Sir, with all due respect, I'm not looking at the news. I'm looking for a house." And he said, "Well, you need to look." Yeah. It's like, "You need to look at the news. You need to sign papers today, assuming command. Your replacement is off island. You're going to take command today. And you need to start planning for hurricanes Irma and Maria." Little did I know.
Remember them. Yeah.
Yes. And so, so I'm looking, okay, what do we have? Because the unit had a brilliant plan in place, but at the same token, didn't necessarily have all the equipment in the right place. So they had water purification capability in a place where there were no people. And I'm like, no. Where's the water going to go out and be most needed? How are we going to do this? And the neat thing is my husband, having been a police officer, he was able to help families in that time. He became actually the USO Volunteer of the Year, and our dog became like the USO center page, therapy dog, mascot, and did so much for the island as well. And so I went from there to being the Chief of Operations for the Army Reserve at Fort Bragg. I went from there to being the Chief of Operations for the Office of the Chief of the Army Reserve. And then I went from there to be the Director of Strategic Operations for the Army Staff, which was space, cyber, data transformation, information advantage, CJAD, C2. And really had a lot of fun getting after that, because General Rainey looked at me and he said, "Dusty, I need you to get your face out there and have conversations with individuals. I need you to really drive us to dynamic change at scope and scale." And that had been one of my frustrations.
So it was the Strategic Operations Command. Is that when the Army first really got around space?
Yes, and we were doing space transfer of individuals to the Space Corps, and so it was really an interesting time, because we were just learning about data and what did it mean. I had at one of the AUSA conventions, I'm having a conversation with a contractor, and I'm like, "Listen, Secretary Warmoth is 10 feet behind me, and she's going to tell you, it's my data. I want to own my data. So if you're telling me I have to pay for my data after I've paid you for your service, not going to happen." And so it was intriguing. And being space certified, it was just, it helped me see a global picture at scope and scale. Now, the other thing I didn't share with you about my childhood is I'm dyslexic. Yes. And so I will tell you that my dyslexia is a superpower, because I see a problem holistically, and faster than other people are going to recognize a problem. So I see the holistic problem, and I'm a phenomenal problem solver. So when I saw the problem that was going on with space, data, and cyber, and we weren't talking about it, and how do you understand that space right now is what pirates in the high seas in the 1800s used to go around doing? That's our problem with space. And we have a lot of nefarious actors. Most people don't even know that there are more space-based ground assets from China in Latin America looking at the southern approach than all the other continents in the world combined.
It's incredible. People have no idea how important that is.
No idea. And they're, and they're ignoring it. And because people don't have a solution, they don't want to talk about it.
I want to pull the thread a little bit on that, because that whole area is just going through so much change. I know you're still involved in it. And we'll talk about it when we get to the future. But, the idea of having a Space Force was disruptive. And I think now, it's the fifth domain, and if you don't win that one, if you don't win space, then you can forget about land, sea, and air, right?
Well, right. You can forget about land, sea, and air, cyber, and data.
I feel like we're behind there.
Space and cyber, what you need to know about space and cyber, what is the thing that they're exchanging in space? It's data.
It's data.
We are on the precipice, and I am not a warmonger, but we are on the precipice of a data war.
Yeah.
We need to get after ethical AI. We need to get after healthy world policies for the movement and utilization of data and cyber, and even how our space is governed. We need to get to a world place to where, like, we have the international law of the seas. We need the international law of the
space. Hard to do that when you're adversaries, though, isn't it?
It is, but we've got to be
probably growing into the future a little bit. But I think people don't appreciate necessarily. I mean, your background, kind of early days, Army, space, cyber. But let's talk about the SOUTHCOM time, and then I think there's a lot of passion around.
Yeah,
that topic.
Absolutely. So I had been in SOUTHCOM once as a young major lieutenant colonel, and then I come back after being on the Army staff as the director of strategic operations for 2 years. I run into General Richardson, and she looks at me, and she comes up close to my face, and she said, "Is it true, Dusty? Are you really fluent in Spanish?" It's like, "Yes, ma'am."
See.
And she said, "And they told me you also, like, you speak some Portuguese too." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am, I do." "And you're running the Army space program." She's like, "Okay, I'll get back to you." And next thing I know, the General Officer Management Office calls me up and says, "Hey, guess what? You're going to SOUTHCOM." And so I was like, okay. And it's where I have a passion for. I love Latin America and the Caribbean. I appreciate what our partner nations are trying to get after with minimal resources and help. They have an enormous challenge. People do not understand the amount of investment that the Chinese have done, hands off almost. Hands off, contracts in, because the contracts win in their favor. And people just want them to fix it, but we're really not thinking through the problem sets that are going on, the problem sets that are moving forward.
In the last 25 years, there's been so much focus on CENTCOM. We're back in EUCOM because of Ukraine, and new administration's focused on INDOPACOM. Of course, AFRICOM's always been, in and out as the flavor of the month. But, there's very little talk about SOUTHCOM, and, very, very little, even from an industry perspective, there's very few companies.
I think we've missed out. It's a Western hemisphere.
Right.
It's not the U.S. hemisphere. It's a Western hemisphere that we have to, absolutely appreciate and leverage the powers of, Brazil, of Argentina, of Chile, of the global South, of, countries that are trying to do their best. We look at Canada as a phenomenal partner. We need to look at all of our partners throughout Latin America and the Caribbean and see how do we reinforce them, and not dictate to them exactly, because sometimes I will say, and I told you I was not going to be political, but I will tell you that sometimes we love to dictate exactly how a country should implement democracy.
Yeah.
Democratic republics. And it's like, we're not perfect either. And how democratic republics are instituted need to be for the benefit of that country with nuances that support each individual country. So we have a lot of phenomenal partner nations. I was fortunate to do all of my engagements with my intelligence counterparts in their language, so I fully understood the nuances of what they were saying, because sometimes it gets lost literally in translation.
Right.
And that was wonderfully powerful. And I will tell you that I was also wonderfully encouraged. Now, not that they're perfect.
Is there any scenario? I mean, we talk about NATO all the time. It's in the news. We do summits. Is there any talk or thoughts around having a South and having a SATO, having some sort of alliance?
Yeah, well, there have been talks, and there have been conversations. Um, we would, as a nation and as a world, need to be phenomenally focused on that. There are conferences and alliances, but to get deliberate around it, and to get what is that purpose to where we can build trust and establish an organization that is kind of the bastion or the light for how the countries go forward. You do.
Right. And what would that be for SOUTHCOM? Would it be Chinese influence? Would it be
It might, but the hard thing is it's hard to get angry when someone owns all your debt and they're keeping you afloat. It's hard to get angry when, well, they built your road and your port. I will never forget when I went to Gabon and, they realized that they had sold most of 90% of their land was forested. They had sold about 75% of that to China.
Yep.
For a port and a highway and a space site. And they did that in Gabon because they needed it. They didn't have their own resources. So what were they willing to do? So it is a problem set. And while I think we want to get tidy with how we look at NATO and the UN, we need to realize that partner nations around the world have changed, grown, modified. And we need to be thinking about a common cause with structure that is agreeable, but yet still holds us all accountable. And I say agreeable, it has commonality.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on. I want to just look back over the last 10 years to 2015 to where we are today. What do you think has been the single greatest change, disruption that's impacted military defense, government contracting? What do you see as a force that's really changed the industry?
I would say it's data. I think data has been an enormous change agent. I remember when I was a young captain and I was taught how to take an Excel file, create a pivot table, and then write macros. And I thought I was brilliant. I thought I was the bomb. But I thought at that time that would be the forcing function within a year or two of all of us seeing a common operating picture. And having transparency. And if we can get the data right, if we can have trust and confidence that it is truthful data, then ideally you can use that for transparency and trust building. And we are now moving to where, as we understand government contracting, I remember when, for example, I was on the Army staff and people were asking how much we were paying for X. And I had people tell me, well, there's no way we can figure that out. We'd have to dig into every contract. And I actually went to an organization and said, can you do this? And we did. We were able to use machine learning and AI to be able to tell us exactly what we were paying for in each contract. And we found out some redundancies, like, oh, we bought X from Y company at the battalion level, and then we bought it again at the brigade level, and then we bought it again at the division level, and then we bought it again at the Army level. All different prices and the same thing. If you can streamline that, government contracts should not fleece the government, and the government should not expect nothing for free. So how do you get to a place to where it's a healthy, dynamic relationship? It's not exclusively this one company that has, a headlock on this contract. It's real competition, and it's effective and dynamic. And so understanding that and seeing that data, in my opinion, is absolutely critical. So I think that's huge. I think also what is huge is I really feel fortunate that we have grown in our appreciation of people. So I will tell you, what do I mean by that? Is we've had a lot of different nomenclatures that I'm not sure were my favorite. We said people first, and it's not that I don't want to be people first, but we are the military. We do have a mission. But I will tell you, I love particularly the Army's mission command, which is you build a cohesive team, you establish a common operating picture, you clearly identify your purpose, key tasks, your end state. You assume, disciplined initiative. You take on the disciplined initiative, and you assume some prudent risk, and then you codify it. Those are all key elements, and we're getting there to where it's expected now. And the people in the service, are looking over going, okay, well, we have this capability. Why are we not using it? And so we're forcing change. The next generation is coming in is like, okay, I will tell you, I've never been so frustrated as someone holding up to me a piece of paper when I was a general and said, ma'am, you can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. And it wasn't nothing unethical, immoral like that. It was, to me, you can't do this because this piece of paper. And I looked up at the date of the piece of paper, and it was from 1988. And I was a general. So, that was like 40 years later, guys. We're talking about, yes, we can. We need to be, what are our principles and our values that we're anchored upon? And how has our technological advancements changed us? And we got to see around corners, where are the places where we can hurt ourselves or hurt others in inappropriate ways? So how do we put boundaries on that? But how do we go after it and embrace it so we can really be fast? There are things that we're doing that you're sitting there going, I have no idea why I spent 3 hours waiting in the corner to review a piece of paper from 1988 that has nothing to do with who I am and what I'm doing today.
Exactly. Yeah. So things are changing, and I want to go forward and look, because I know you're passionate about data and cyber, and you have so many areas of passion, and I wanted to get your view. So let's fast forward, not 10 years and not 5 years, 3 years from now. That should be manageable. And so it's 2028. We're well deep in this administration. We have potential for conflict in Asia. We have the stuff going with Ukraine. We have talk of annexations, a lot of activity now moving down towards SOUTHCOM. What do you see, or what does the world look like? What does the industry look like? What does foreign policy look like 3 years from now?
Well,
question.
That's a big question because, it depends a lot on people's
now
actions.
Talk about SOUTHCOM, maybe.
Well, so worst case scenario is China owns the Panama Canal in and out, everything going in and out. They have the Port of Shanghai, and they have built, railroads cross country throughout South America, and they own most of the banking systems and fiscal capability. So that not only affects, goods, but it also affects services. You've alienated a lot of our partners down south because a lot of times we attack them for not doing enough. Instead of coming alongside them, we have some incredible special forces soldiers. And the one thing that special forces is good at doing is coming alongside partner nations and just helping them build themselves, capacity building. Civil affairs, those soldiers have just a critical role. And so how do we have that transparency? When right now, I think it might have changed, but there is a Chinese influx right now through the Darien Gap China used to be like the 16th nation that might be emigrating through the Darien Gap and through Central America. I think they're like at 3 now. And they're staying in Latin America, and then also changing policies and thought processes for governance throughout Latin America.
So how likely is that worst case scenario 3 years from now, 2028, that we have as kind of a China has a lockdown on South America?
Well, it can be pretty high unless, companies and governments invest in our partners and get a true investment, not a finger wagging, but a true investment of let's come alongside. Because what you should know is Latin America is the breadbasket of the world. And China gets about a third of its food from Latin America. The amount of natural resources that come from Latin America. And so instead of having Latin America be just, decimated because they have this capability and people just want to take, how do we help build them up to where we're not trying to fleece anyone, but it is a mutual focus on enabling them to help themselves and to help the nations around them.
So if you're in our industry, you're in government contracting, and you see this. So this is a scenario, worst case scenario. Where do you see investments from the government side and also from the industry side?
Well, so that's another interesting point, because we didn't really even hit on. China is a big believer in the dual use facility. So everything they build can be easily switched from commercial to government or military. That's how they build everything. So what our companies need to do is go and invest and really try and help companies and services throughout Latin America, have other options, because we haven't been doing that. We haven't been giving them other options. We've been taking the safe route.
So the aid and development funds that were once going to SOUTHCOM or South America, Latin America, are certainly constricted, and there's not a lot of defense activity down there. So who's gonna incentivize companies to invest there?
Well, that is a good place, but I would say that corporate America, that's where I think that they can come in, because, like I said, it being the breadbasket and being so rich in resources, if you did it responsibly, you could really, I think, create a win-win that is unparalleled. It doesn't have to be the military. And that's the problem. Is we love to say, well, it's because we put a military base there. It doesn't have to be the military, but we have to be able to do that discovery and then help build out the countries and those companies. And we have to build it on a more strategic manner versus an instant effect, because that's the other thing that we suffer from here in the United States. We want we want to invest and we want something else. We want our instant popcorn versus understanding that, in consistency over time is going to get you more capability for the greater organization.
Right. Yeah. It's a long play. You got to have the patience for it. I want to pick one other topic for the future, because I know you're passionate around cyber and AI and moral use of that. I think you're involved with Incognito as well.
Yes.
Where you're looking at deep fake
audio detection. Yes.
What's this is moving so fast, and everybody talks AI, but I know you're an expert in this. What do we look like 2028? How's AI impacting the defense industry?
Well, we can go two ways. So that for a long time we were in resistance of this has no value. I think if and when we set it up with ethical standards, I think we can really utilize it to make us more efficient. There's a lot of conversation about, AI can do two things with people. It can make them more lazy, or it can really bring out their brilliance. And I think we have a lot of hungry people, whether it be in our military service or across the board, that can really use AI to drive more impactful change for organizations. How do we do routine things routinely, and the routine things that I don't need to do? How do I have the knowledge and assurance that AI is doing that for me and doing it within the parameters that I have set for it? That can really be magical. Things like, oh, how is your email sorted, or all those different things. I mean, I will tell you that when I left Southern Command, I was averaging 250 to 300 emails a day that I personally went through every single one, and were not prioritized for me or not even columned for me by different AI capability. It was Dusty Schultz not getting enough sleep.
Yep, that's the option. I mean, it's fascinating to hear the different angles. Our last guest, General Crossland's talking about sensors and health sensors and individual health reporting on soldiers, and just the way this is going to impact our industry. It creates a lot of opportunities, I think, for industry that can figure out how to get in front of it. And I think that's attracting more investment in the defense side. Companies that weren't necessarily wanting to get into the hardcore hardware but are dual use technology. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for sure. And I know that you're going to be right in the middle of it somehow, right?
Probably. And I will tell you, how do companies pause, look at themselves and go, okay, what do I have to do? What does it have to be done by a person? What is appropriate for AI to do? And what can I have confidence that when AI does it, it does it well?
Yeah, that's right. Well, the future is, it's always uncertain. Things are changing fast. But I know I'm just excited to see what you're going to do in this next phase line of life out of uniform. You've been such a force within the military, and now I know you're out already having a huge impact on organizations. So I'm pulling for you, Dusty. Glad to have you as part of our community. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today. Before I wrap up, I do want to get your one word as you look to the future. How do you feel about the future of the government contracting industry? One word.
Hopeful.
Hopeful. Why is that?
Because I believe that a lot of the changes we're making, while they might not be executed as brilliant as I'd like, I am hopeful that we're going to get contracting lean and more effective and resilient and responsive.
Yeah.
And I think we are heading that way. And I think we have to. We're at an inflection point that is forcing us there. And I believe that if we embrace this, we all can be better for it, and it will free up resources, people, money, thought. I think we will all be in a better place. And then, as we are in that, ideally it will reduce stress on individuals, and we can move at the speed of trust.
Yep. I've seen you use that term. That's a good one. Hey, Dusty, thanks for coming out on the podcast today. I look forward to seeing you around the industry over the next several months. Love to have you back. We'll check in on how things are going with you as you make an impact on the other side, on the industry side. But thanks again for everything you've done, and thanks for everything you will do. And thanks for being on our podcast.
Jake, it's been a real pleasure, and thanks for sharing this platform with me and talking about things that I am passionate about.
Awesome. And to the audience, thank you for tuning in to this episode. We have more great content coming. If you like it, share it with your friends, subscribe, reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any feedback, ideas, things you want to hear folks talking about. Make sure you're following us on LinkedIn. We're putting out information every day on contract awards, major programs, policy, M&A. So make sure you're following us there. And we look forward to seeing everybody on our next episode. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So thanks for joining me on the future of GovCon. If you enjoyed today's conversation, share it with a friend, follow the podcast, and subscribe to YouTube so you don't miss our bold predictions shaping our industry. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn and learn more about precision talent solutions at pts.careers. Thanks for tuning into the Future of GovCon, and see you next week.